Hello, and welcome to the Morgan Latif Spotlight Sessions. Today, our guest is Mauricio Garcia. Mauricio is the Global Head of Ready to Drink for Supply Chain at Suntory Global Spirits. Over his 25 years of experience, Mauricio has led global organizations to best-in-class levels, doing transformational projects around people, processes, and technology. In this conversation, we talk about how he has developed his international career, the challenges that he faced, and the lessons that he took from them. I really enjoyed it. I think it was really good to hear from Mauricio and took great value from it. So I'm pretty sure that you will too. Without further ado, let's head into the conversation. Hello, Mauricio. How are you doing?
Very good. Hi, Alberto. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for your time. It's a pleasure to have you here in our Spotlight sessions.
Likewise, Alberto. Thank you for having me here.
So, well, Mauricio, we have spoken a few times, right? And every time that we have spoken, I have actually been impressed by how you have developed your career in supply chain within the food and beverage industry, right? You've been a leader in companies like Molson Coors, SAB Miller, Barry Callebaut, and now at Beam Suntory, right? So the first kind of topic that I wanted to talk about is how have you developed your career intentionally to reach this international scope?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Alberto. I was really, before engaging in this conversation, I was reflecting a little bit on hey, what is Alberto is going to ask me, etc. And yes, the career, the international career, has been always something very top of mind, and I believe that in life you kind of need some sparks, right, and some moments of truth, etc. And I need to say that there is some influence from my parents, actually, Alberto.
Okay.
When you go back in time, so my father and mother were kind of pioneers for their time. My father did his studies in Belgium and in Switzerland, my mother in Washington, both from Colombia. I believe that is why they took the decision to make me go to an international Swiss school, and this willingness to go and travel around the world, etc. I believe it came from that very little, or not little, but that kind of experience. And all I want to say is that you need to like it, right?
Right.
You need to like to to be in this international and cross-cultural environment. And to your point, being intentional about it. So being intentional about it is, I speak, so my native language is Spanish. We are having this conversation in English. I also speak French. You need to enjoy traveling around the world, and it is something that I did myself. When I finished my university in Colombia and I started to work, at some point I said, okay, probably it's a good time to improve my English. So I had kind of a break between the
Okay.
university and my first formal job, and I did spend like half a semester up in Massachusetts in the hospitality business. Nothing related to industrial engineering, just because that was an opportunity to have a day-to-day interaction, and learn beyond the books what is to live in a as a native English speaker. Same thing when deciding what to do with your career. So I joined Unilever, and then a little bit with Film Tex, which was more a Colombian, but then decided, hey, if I really enjoy the international environment, I probably need to go back to more multinational companies. So that is when I decided to go back to SC Johnson and Diversey. Um, uh, then also very intentional in deciding my graduate studies and postgraduate studies. So when I made the decision to to submit my application to my MBA, it was specifically done or thought to pursue that international career, and that is why I selected the MBA at Thunderbird University, because it's a known university or college or entity around international business.
Okay. So the education part is a big part, right? You have to make that conscious decision of having that education and educate yourself, right? You say that you had to go and practice your English more and maybe had English courses in order to achieve that.
Yes. Otherwise, it's so interesting, the point, because at some point I had a better French than my English, and then I realized that really the business language is English. I'm not saying any new thing here, right? But it was not at that level, so I needed to do something about it. Yes.
Right.
And of course, my MBA was in English, so yeah.
So education is a big part of that, right? But you've also lived in different parts of the world. You mentioned Switzerland. I know you've lived in the UK as well. How has that, that living in different corners of the world, how has that shaped you as a leader, right? Because we know that now in the industry, everyone talks about diversity and inclusion. What effect did that have in you as a leader?
Yes. So first, just to emphasize, Alberto, probably your point about also, or the earlier point about being intentional is key here, right? Because we are talking now also about the work environment, being very open and very into, I'm okay going abroad, right? Like saying to the company, to the employer, hey, I'm here and I'm very open to work abroad. So yes, I lived in Puerto Rico, I lived in the UK, I moved to the US. And to answer your question, having access to this cross-cultural environment, conversations, projects, different backgrounds, definitely provides and brings in a lot of perspective. You win not only by your own experience, but by other experiences. It's the point about diversity, and this is what proves the value of diversity, is the key one here. There's no better answer than the one that considers a full range of perspectives, and in the end takes the best out of each one to build the best of all, right? So that is kind of the what I try to get from this multicultural experience, if it makes sense.
Right. So that's something that has helped you a lot, having those different perspectives coming after having lived in different countries.
Very much, Alberto. And if you allow me to actually provide a very specific example, the one that come up instantly to mind is S&OP, right? For me, S&OP, it's something that has been with me all my career. I have led the process in 7 or 8 different companies at multi-site, local, global, regional level. And it's impressive. Every time I go and implement an S&OP process in a new company/market, there are new things, right, that I learned from that experience. And of course, I come with all my background and providing, again, different views. So I believe it has definitely made a difference. I'm sure that was behind all the good work actually recognized by some consultants out there of the work we did in SAP Miller, reaching best-in-class practices. So again, just a specific example to illustrate your point about how this multicultural aspect and experience has helped me in my career.
And actually, I'm wondering, do you see that as a manager? The people that you have managed, in the past, do you see that people that have had a similar upbringing as yours, in the sense that having lived in different countries, sometimes they bring, different perspectives to the table?
Definitely, yes. Other very specific examples. There are some cultures and realities that are, I would say, more marked than others. If I bring specific examples, and someone could argue extreme examples, if you want to do businesses in China, there are language considerations, there are cultural considerations. Same thing if you go to India, etc. So to answer your question,
right,
you can feel almost immediately who has that kind of awareness in the team versus other that has just been working with a local slash country approach.
Yes, yeah, it makes sense. In your case specifically, obviously, you come from a Latin American country, you've lived in many parts of the world, and now you're living in the US, even though you have an international and global role, right? What challenges have you faced coming from a Latin American country and making the move, for example, from living in Colombia at the beginning of your career and now living in the US?
It's a great question, Alberto. And I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. Of course, there are challenges. I'm sure that there are people out there that have faced more challenges than I. But I can tell you that being a minority can be a disadvantage if you let it happen. Right? There are a lot of prejudices coming from Latin America. Is your level of education the right one? Can you actually speak the language? Have you had access to high standards, best practices, etc.?
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I believe that globalization has helped a lot to change that throughout the years. Large multinationals also have helped because they foster talent mobility and development. So there are a few things that help there. From my experience, I can tell you that Diversey was great, right? In my experience with Diversey, that company offered that platform I'm referring to, the multinational that, hey, you start in Colombia, then I give you do well, I give you Andean, you do great, I give you Caribbean. Hey, why don't you share best practices with Mexico and Brazil? And actually, why don't we sit together with the North American team to see what is the best out there? Other great example, SAB Miller, which is a very particular example because its bases actually were developing countries. When you think about SAB Miller and its history, it was Africa and then Latin America, and then it could help that actually could take over and make great things. So I believe it is important, the awareness, and again, just do something about it. Do something about it. Build your career and just use your leverages, your levers to make it happen.
Is networking one of those levers? I think that you need to. Do you think that you need to do more networking, less networking?
Networking will always help, right? And it is where being intentional about it is very important. Why to say this, Alberto? Because now we go a little bit into personalities, introverts, extroverts, etc. I would describe myself more as an introvert, meaning that many times I need to be intentional and very aware of the need of doing some networking, speaking a foreign language, acknowledging that it's going to not going to be perfect, but better every time.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, 100%. Okay.
Yeah.
And when it comes to supply chain, you already mentioned or gave an example about the S&OP process, right? And how having those different backgrounds really helps with a transformation like that one. But have you felt that having that international scope, that international background, has helped you to become a better supply chain leader?
Definitely yes, Alberto. And what you're saying gives me the opportunity to talk about what I describe as two of the most important values or pillars for a supply chain career. And in my view, these two are people and continuous improvement. So when with the years, you realize that you can invest tons of money in tools or technology. You
Mhm.
can also invest tons of money in paying consultants and improving the processes, etc. And in the very end, every time it goes back to people. So
Right. Okay.
you having this opportunity to know a lot of people, backgrounds, experiences, is only helping you to build your capabilities and capacities on how to better manage people, how to better build teams, etc. So that on one side of things. On the other, very, very close to the supply chain essence is the continuous improvement. Again, the opportunity to do benchmarking, to understand what KPI is an acceptable one, how the journey for improving a set of KPIs and results or capability building could be working, much level of maturity, etc. So all comes together and contributes to the continuous improvement, which is um, almost a personality kind of or essence of the person and the team, which I believe it is very, very, very needed in a supply chain profile. So yeah, these two probably could contribute to become a better leader in the supply chain.
Yeah. And you've mentioned in some of our conversations that you've seen many different processes, right, across the world, in the USA, in the Latin American countries, and actually, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned that in some specific processes you had they were better developed in some South American countries, for example, right?
Definitely yes, and it brings me back to my experience in the beer industry for sure. So fast forwarding there for a second, it's not a surprise, or probably for some it was a surprise that in the end developing countries ended up taking over the beer industry. So we are talking, so ABI is the largest player. We're talking about
Mhm.
Brazil, we're talking about SAB, Africa, Latin America, and there is something very particular that I have found in high performing teams in Latin America. The level of engagement is impressive. They always want to do better. And when you provide the environment and platform for that, they can come with unbelievable on time in full performance. To bring the example, we are talking in the most acid definition of it, performances between 95 and 99%, which you rarely see in
Right.
that exact same industry in the US or in Europe. So yes, I have found that more than once, Alberto.
Which goes back to the point of someone that has lived those processes internally and then goes back to another country can bring those values and that way of working, right? We talked before about globalization, having that 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 background. So I think that's a great
One
great
hundred
example.
percent.
Yeah, I'm talking about now that you mentioned this, the brewing industry. Your experience is impressive in consumer goods in the sense that you mentioned companies like Diversey and you've worked at Barry Callebaut, but you had a lot of experience in brewing and spirits, right? Uh, how did you fall into that category? Did you do that consciously as well, or is it something of a coincidence as well?
Uh, I love the question. So I switched from diversity to SAP Miller in my career. And in the middle of both, I did my MBA. So I did an executive program, right,
Right.
while working. And your question brings me back to that being intentional of building your global career. And what SAP Miller offered me was that expanded platform to go global. And actually, what they offered me was literally a global role. My first role in SAP Miller was a global role.
Right.
So it was 100% in line with what I was looking for from a scope point of view. It also provided that very ambitious, high growth environment, which I
Mhm.
like it too. Uh, and it was via that situation or circumstances that I joined the alcohol industry. Once in there, I have to also say it is something you either love or not. I love it. I believe that is a product that is actually so close to emotions that that is what we sell when you are
Yeah,
in this industry. You sell emotions, you sell moments, you sell memories.
the moments, yeah, the
So
experiences.
yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah, great. And you at the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned your parents as role models or people that really influence your upbringing by allowing you to go internationally and to travel. Have you had any other role models either within your family or within the industry, that have helped you in your professional career?
Yes, on this one, I'm going to go back to my family, Alberto. And I want to say that definitely my mother, she's a person with a huge resilience. She has this capability of envisioning things
Mhm.
and making things happen. I I have um, I remember when we still have these conversations today about embarking in these almost unattainable projects, right? Like, okay, do you want to go and do this trip to improve your English, etc.? It seemed like very disruptive from a career point of view. I was actually leaving my internship in Unilever and probably saying no to an opportunity like that just to go and have this experience. And she was like, go for it,
Yeah.
do not think about that. It's good for the long term. It's going to be the best for you. If that is a company for you, you're going to have the opportunity. And guess what? She was right. When I finished that, Unilever hired me again. So it's
Yeah.
just a simple example of that spirit that is very important for your
Yes.
personal and professional life.
And we go back to the point of being intentional about it, right? You talked about your parents being intentional about that as well, and having these projects and pushing for that, right?
It's so important, Alberto. And hey, we are all humans. I have needed more than once to remind myself, hey, what is really the long term view? What do I want with my career? What do I want with also my personal life? Career and personal life, they go together. Let's I know that a lot of people say separate them, but they go together. I mean, just by the fact that of moving around the world. So it's very important from time to time to have that reflection and say, okay, if that is my end goal, what can I do? What is under my control?
Yes.
To make that happen. And it's going to happen.
Yes, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mauricio. It's been a pleasure to listen to you. For me, it's clear that there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I think are kind of set in stone. Which is that if you want to have a career like yours and develop yourself as you did, it's that intentional piece, right? Just being conscious about it and make it happen, work for it. You mentioned your education, your background, how you traveled across the world, and actually how your parents and role models help you with on that as well, right? I think it was great to hear your story and learn a few lessons from it. I thank you very much for your time, and I stay at your disposal for anything that you need.
Thanks to you, Alberto. It's always a pleasure and always will be. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for your time, Mauricio.